Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tech Podcast series. This is Lakshit Pan from Azure Developer Community powered by Microsoft. This episode, we are just going to, catch up here. It's been my pleasure to, again host Pradeep sir for this podcast. He's the CEO of co-founder and CEO of Dhiway. We have been talking a lot. We have earlier when we did we tried to converse with him. We were talking about token full blockchain, the current announcement that time about the scenario about blockchain and a lot more stuff. That was the time when generative AI was very new, right? That we had the quick conversion that time, but now the scenario has been totally different. It's everywhere, right? It's everywhere. AI is everywhere, blockchain is everywhere. We'll catch up on different topics today. It's going to be a fun conversation for all of us. Let's but to kick start this podcast, I'll quickly request Pradeep sir, if you could introduce yourself first for our audience. It will be a kind pleasure.
Hi, Lakshit. Good to be again back on your podcast. My name is Pradeep, and I am the CEO of Dhiway Networks. We are a layer one chain which run a trust framework in the country, and very proud to state that one of the initial blockchain trust framework models in the country, and done by Indians for India, but available to the globe. And very happy to be here on your podcast, Lakshit. I'm looking forward to an interesting conversation.
Yeah, my pleasure, sir. So, for a quick context thing, right? If you can just explain the way and the reason of founding, the way and the tech that works behind and how it empowers the Indian ecosystem from a blockchain perspective, from a industry perspective, from a tech perspective. You can explain it simple words, right, sir?
Right. So, what we have created is a platform, a trust based platform that effectively does five very simple things, philosophically speaking. One is it's a highly scalable platform, works on population scale. That's the amount of transactions that it can carry. Secondly, it's an immutable sort of a platform, which means that if you make an assertion, it is an immutability or non-tamperability about the assertion on the platform. Third, very importantly, is that there is global verifiability, which is that you can verify the assertion on globally and done in nanoseconds. And fourthly, friction-free interaction, which typically means that when you get onto the platform, you could converse with other platforms on a very seamless basis. And the typical problems of different systems talking to each other, as a result of which there's a cut in the system, which means you can't talk seamlessly. That never happens on our system because it's very flexible. And lastly, what we call the last state of matter, which is it tells you at this point of time what is the current state of that assertion. For example, let's say if you were to employ a driver and the driver was employed on the basis of, let's say, a driving license. If, let's say, there's a change post the employment and the driving license is no more valid, it will tell you through a proactive broadcast, it will tell the person who relied on that assertion that this is no more valid. And so these are
Right.
very five basic philosophies on which the trust platform has been created. We use a blockchain technology to address the requirements of these five behaviors. We've used
Right.
a derivative of substrate Polkadot. We worked on Rust as a language for doing this. And it's a layer one blockchain, just like an Ethereum or a Solana and or Hedera. And so it's one of the first chains to be created, I should say, at this size and scale in the country. Does extremely quick transactions. We have achieved speeds up to around 4 billion transactions per day, and
Wow.
we are very happy to say that this has come out of India, and a lot of the use cases are typically Indian to start with, but it's available to the people all around the globe. And so we
Right.
are seeing a lot of interest coming in from countries outside India to see how best to adopt this at a global level. Having said that, there are this is so basic in terms of philosophy that it can address any and every type of industry. Anything that the value chain requires in terms of these five behaviors can be
Wow.
addressed very seamlessly through this trust platform. Now, having said that, we currently, given the stage at which we are in, we address five critical areas. digital commerce, digital payments, skills, workplace, and education. In the area of digital commerce, we work very closely with the ONDC, the Open Network for Digital Commerce, and we have instantiated a chain called the Confidex, which is basically from the core technology background that we have instantiated for them. We work very closely on digital payments with the NPCI, where we have instantiated a, a, a a POC is just complete on phase two with the NPCI, where we have instantiated a chain for transactions which are largely financial in nature. It's a tokenization of financial assets for the country. And in the area of skills, education, and workplace, of course, we are dealing with, apart from the open network for education and skilling transactions, we deal with a number of customers in the education and in the corporate place, which is basically HR related activities and workplace related activities, and in the skills place with organizations like the NSDC. So today, where we are, our platform, which is called, has got around 22 million blocks. As we speak, it was around 16 or 17 when we spoke the last time. And so we are around 22 million blocks. And as we speak, we have around 500,000 credentials out in the market, because we have a verifiable digital credential application which is on the platform. We have around 500,000 credentials out in the market. And we have roughly around 1,000 customers. We have entered paying customer space. Happy to say we are now revenue. We were pre-revenue when we spoke last, so we are into revenue now, and yeah, that's where we are. Uh, the product has started gaining a lot of traction. The platform is gaining a lot of maturity, and I should say the last 2 3 years have been evangelizing the platform, and we are starting to see some very interesting progress and successes on the platform itself.
In fact, myself, I have been a, I have been a, blind advocate of the Dhiway in some sense, because I have been, walking out into multiple hackathons, and there I see all these students building on blockchain, and they are just trying to build these, imply blockchain into legal applications, right? But when we talk about legal application, token blockchain cannot be, cannot, be a significant choice there. So I always used to say, why do not you, use the Dhiway that can, because that time I just, when I explored the TV very first time, I was very, very surprised to see something coming from India, and this is strong, right? So every time every hackathon wherever I go, I have been advocating the way now,
Thank you.
because
Thank you
because
for that.
again, kudos to your team and the work that you have done together, right? It's really incredible. I have seen, and I've been really observing it from the very, since we have spoken last on the socials, right? There has been a massive growth I've observed. So because moving ahead to the, our podcast part of it, right? When we, because when we talk about entire this ecosystem, right, there has been quite there comes the quite, acronyms that comes along, right, like compliance, interoperability, governance. If you can simplify it for our audience in a simple manner, how you would do it, right?
When you mean interoperability and governance from the point of view of the chain itself,
Yeah, right, sir.
see, firstly, what we have to say is that we are not a crypto-based chain, right? That's a very important thing, because we are crypto-less. The token is by itself largely only for integrity on the chain, so it's not a requirement that you have to have a listed token for a blockchain to work. That's the first thing, right? So with that one basic thing, we have transcended a lot of governance related issues, because in India today, it is a little bit of a gray area whether how cryptos can be used, listed tokens, the way it is listed. It's a little gray area. There is no uh, traction that we see from this standpoint for our chain, because we are cryptoless. Having said that, every chain today, it's a permissioned chain, which means depending on the type of instantiation that you create, permissions are created by the governance council attached to that particular chain. For example, let me give an example. We have instantiated a chain for ONDC. It's called the Confidex, which means the confidence index is what the chain is. And this particular chain has its own governance. It will have, typically it is created by the ONDC. It's owned by the ONDC currently, but I'm sure as it starts building traction, it will be available for various other types of uses, which could even include typically a UADAI, an Aadhaar, or a Parivahan system, or the Ministry of Home Affairs could be part of it, because it's basically a trust framework, right? And it's in what we call DPI, Digital Public Infrastructure. So that is something that's available for the country and for a lot of these institutions to actually port on the platform. As a result of which, the governance will start playing very clearly in tune with the type of people on the platform. You could have a METI or a UADAI or a ONDC is on the governance, definitely. It's created the chain. And you could have someone like a Parivahan, or you could have someone like the representatives from the Ministry of Home Affairs if they're going to use the chain. So this governance will largely be focused, and I should say atypical to the type of people who come onto the chain, because it is their chain. And if you're, as you're aware, the government is the largest issuer of credentials, right? And it is a custodian of the credentials, but not the owner of the credential. The owner of the credential is the holder, but it's the largest custodian of the credentials. It's very important governance that they actually handle by being custodians. And therefore, the governance quickly follows the type of a chain which is very typical there. Now, there is another chain that we have created for the entity, not yet named, but I think when that particular chain comes up, it will have a governance which is atypical to the financial sector, right? We have
Right.
also instantiated a chain for some private players and for some large KYC institutions, and the chains will be very atypical to those. And so the governance will again be very typical to those type of chains that are getting created. So this is how the whole creation of a chain and the uses and what it can be and who are the players who will come onto the chain will be determined.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sir. So, because most of our thoughts come from the the what we infer from the socials or from the the social platforms, right? I really
Yeah.
wanted to know what has been the, because you have been working with all these organizations, like especially with the ONDC. What is the plan behind ONDC, right? If you, in the simple words, what has been there, right? What was the thought of government to imply ONDC with the this blockchain entirely? When we talk about open systems and everything, what has been the plan?
See, I understand that when the sort of digital commerce explosion happened, right? I mean, and a lot of the things, I mean, it's not just post COVID, even pre COVID, that explosion has already started. E commerce has started becoming a large play. I believe that over a period of time, what started happening was that the ability of certain types of systems to be highly curated and starting to get a little, I won't say larger than life, but I should say that the experience of what you see on the digital commerce platform started getting very focused to a type of activity which was getting curated by large applications, right? And what happened invariably is that we could see this in, let's say, the food space, where over a period of time, even the digital commerce transactions started creating a little bit of a focus on players in the market who were starting to feel a little disadvantaged, depending on the type of activity they were in and the maturity at which they were in. So, what invariably happened was that I think the government got into play to say, listen, various markets we have various rules. In the digital space, actually, it is almost like there are not very many rules that govern the way you can address issues out of curation, issues where people start feeling a little aggrieved or organizations start feeling aggrieved in the way the transaction and activity takes place in those markets. Like, give you for an example, a simple thing like, let's say, if there's a Gupta Kirana store which is on a particular marketplace. I don't want to name the marketplace. Let's call it Marketplace X. Let's say the Gupta Kirana store supplies Marketplace X. And tomorrow, Gupta Kirana store goes to Marketplace Y. Now, what happens is when it goes from Marketplace X to Y, the experience of X never translates into Y. That is a whole new story for a Gupta Kirana store to start its history from Y. So, now, this is very important for the marketplaces X and marketplace Y, because a lot of their valuations are predicated on the stickiness, right, of Gupta Kirana store with their marketplace. But the government felt a little differently, I guess. It says that let's get the marketplace a little more egalitarian, right? It's not that the marketplaces shouldn't be there. They are part of a very important process of the digital structure, which means you have specific marketplace applications that address requirements of the specific suppliers like a Gupta Kirana store. But let's build a rule which says that, hey, when it comes to your ratings, the ratings are going to go from the seller app or the buyer app right into a network which is a rating service provider is going to be part of this network, and it's going to get onto a chain, which is what is now the Confidex. Right, this is the first application that is getting live. What happens is that if, let's say, the Gupta Kirana store moves from marketplace X to Y in the new ONDC system, the ratings also move along with them. Why? Because it is getting into a centralized marketplace. Now, what it is doing is that it is creating a level of independence for the Gupta Kirana store to be able to move from marketplace to marketplace, fully aware that its rating will get projected into the new marketplace too, right? Marketplace X will get it, and if move to marketplace Y will get it. Now, this will now extend not only to ratings as we go along, it could go to several areas like loyalty points, it could go to areas like registries. How can you even register on this new marketplace? You have to get a centralized registry that will also be on the chain. So that Confidex trust layer that has got created is a capability that has been created to make the marketplace a lot more egalitarian, which means little more level playing for all the players in the system. So,
Wow.
like this, there are many ways in which the protocol out there is creating that impetus for people to come onto the chain and be able to have an equal chance of getting to the customer on this marketplace, right? So,
Wow.
the supplier focus is very keen. I think the government got into play to ensure this, and it created a very interesting model like the one that has got created now, and ONDC doing a lot of work in this space in trying to create through backend protocols and trying to create the structure and the framework for the ONDC to thrive. So going forward, I think there are a lot more applications that will come onto the Confidex chain, the ONDC chain, and it's going to create what's called a level playing field for everybody on this marketplace.
Okay.
Having said that, I think it will get a lot more marketplace application providers too. It will get a lot more new markets getting created on these type of models. There could be a digital verifiable credential application model on a platform like this, which is a database platform. There could be a lot more registries created, and other players will leverage on this. Typically, a TransUnion Civil, for example, could leverage data coming from ratings to start addressing the credit requirements in their own space, right? Because they have a credit rating requirement sitting on leverage.
Right.
Because who are the credit rating at the end of the day? The same Gupta Kirana store also, right? And so
Right.
the network impact of this is pretty large, pretty huge. And I think in times to come, I think this will be a defining moment that this trust layer created a sense of more independence and more equal play for all the players on this particular marketplace. So I think a lot of good things to come in the years ahead.
I really wonder, who is the brain behind all this, entire ecosystem, who has really thought about this idea, right, of bringing this to a confidence layer. Now, because I have seen something that you have been frequently talking about this COD project, right? What it looks like and how one can contribute to this COD project, because I saw it's an open source project, right? So, what it looks like, what does the contribution looks like, and how does it impact the industry?
So the COD project is like any open source project based on GLP licensing systems. It's on GitHub. People should join the community, and there are a lot of people who have been joining. Off late, I've seen a lot of traction on GitHub, and interesting models keep coming up, and I see a lot of activity, a lot of people building on it, and so it is available to everybody. I mean, at the end of the day, GitHub code is available out there. We have an enterprise code too, which we of course use it for instantiating. But there's a GitHub code, which is a community-based project out there. People, please do develop, and please do participate in the community. A lot of queries do come up there. You can pick it up. I mean, this is available for all developers, and good that you brought this up, because as one of the things in open source is it's as vibrant as the community that it is in, right? and there's
Right.
no dearth of that community in India. We have some of the brightest brains out there, brightest brains in the student community. All of them are very, very sharp, very smart, and I think they can do a lot of work on it.
Yeah, and in fact, I really wonder open source has a lot more potential, because if we see the present situation, I do not think more than 2% of the entire ecosystem really contribute. Indian developers really contribute to open source, right? It's a very few number of developers who really contribute to open source in compared to the globally. But if all the developers should, we have seen it with multiple examples like Linux, OpenAI, what has been there, right? So it has been running for years without no efforts, right? So if
So
one
Linux was defining because when it started. I mean, there's a humongous amount of evangelization required
yeah.
for the a lot of that has changed today. It's not something which is unique in that sense, but community participation is important, right? I mean,
Right.
that's what makes an open source project robust. But I can tell you one thing: I think the students in college and schools and colleges and the people who have just joined the workforce are very, very, very focused. They're very engaged in open source areas today. It's not like earlier. They're a lot more sharper, and then they do a lot of things and very creative. So I somehow I'm very positive that something good will come out. And for us, it's a defining moment for us because this is a chain out of the country, and who else should contribute to the community more than our people, right? I mean, that's what
Yeah,
it's for.
absolutely.
I would through this podcast want to really pull a call out to all the students out there, to college goers, and to people who have just joined industry, people who work in industry in open source. Please do come contribute. There's a lot of things to be done, and a lot of challenges to address. And this is the right place, right time. Please do join us in our community
Yeah,
outreach.
right. Yeah, absolutely right. We have, fortunately, we have this power of, building something very, very cool in India, right? We have this leverage, and why shouldn't we, use it, of course. You know, the last time we spoke, when it was about the AI and Gen AI, right? It was very fresh in the industry, but we have seen it now, right? But it's everywhere approximately. And if we talk about from Microsoft per se, it's everywhere, right? They have integrated in the entire ecosystem. I really want to know what are your thoughts about AI. Every product that you see on Product Hunt is now an AI product. Every startup, every we have seen a lot more. The number has been significantly increased after the AI boom, right? What do you see? How do you see this coming? And what are your thoughts about applications of AI in different industries like recruitment, or maybe and customer management or CRM platforms? Yeah.
No, see, this use of the AI is almost like a bingo word today. I mean, everyone refers to AI and they will have something to talk about AI. So it's the herd that's moving towards AI. But well, it has some very, very high capabilities in what it tends to achieve algorithmically and otherwise. It's an extremely it will have very, very far reaching changes, but it will differ from level to level, right? I mean, at a very basic level, there could be a clear shift to AI based modules. I mean, it's not today it's very silly to talk about chat gpt. Everyone talks about it, and you don't know what's done on chat and what's done outside chat because everybody is everybody is on the same modules, and I think it's going to be very significant. And it is the one thing that I always feel is that, see, there is a certain there's a certain way in which we look at AI, right? It's very iterative. The algorithm is based on data. The data is very, very primary and very critical to the whole basis on which AI generates results and can determine outcomes, right? One of the things that we go out of the way to say is, guys, get your bulwark of data extremely carefully clear, because today a lot of what AI determines is the basis on which very critical decisions are taken and large investments are made behind these algorithms. We should be also clear that let us try and make that layer very strong, because that layer is going to be very critical for meaningful AI to throw out meaningful results. And
Right.
that's not something that we should forget very easily when we talk about AI. It's very nice and cool to talk about AI, and it is going to be very far reaching in terms of effects, in terms of capabilities. So that's where we stand on the matter. In fact, I won't be surprised somewhere down the road if we see AI being packaged with chain capabilities to some extent. And that will probably make for a more robust AI, result oriented AI, right? Because when what goes in is more robust, I think the AI capability and results that it gives you are a lot more consistent and a
Right.
lot more reliable. It's a different matter that I can also tell you that a lot of AI will have a lot of legal challenges, and will go through some amount of what I should say, jurisprudence clarity will be required in the way AI has some very big challenges today, because it tends to very liberally take its take its backup from sources which are now starting to be a little sensitive.
Right.
Because some of those sources are starting to feel very sensitive about their own data. So I think it's going to be, and again, AI will need a chain at its back end to be sure that the person who claims that that is his data, it's actually his data. And AI is actually working on that data. So largely, I can tell you one thing, that the chain will be a very, very focused requirement. And for very, I should say, progressive AIs will start looking at getting that bit completely, managed, so that they don't have any potential issues on the legal side going forward. I
Wow.
should feel that's something that people will have to keep an eye and a lookout for, because
Wow.
let us say if the potential for AI to create some very sensitive results which pushes a thought process in a particular direction, and then you go back and figure out why it happened, they would have to be very clear about what their data sets were to reach that conclusion. So it's not as simple as we think. There are a lot of very deep legal impacts of AI too, but no two ways about it. AI has come, and we better be comfortable with it. And it may spawn a huge amount of new activity, a new way of dealing with at our work spots, a new way of dealing with how to query these uh, these AIs in the first place, because that is starting to also look very interesting, because it all depends on what you ask is what you get.
Right.
So interesting
True.
times, as I say, interesting times.
Yeah, now that you have already given a kind of future predictions for AI and blockchain, right, I really want you to talk about this, because we are reaching to them, due to paucity of time we cannot extend it more, because now but I really want you to answer one last question of mine.
Yeah,
What do you
sure.
think, which industry do you will have the biggest potential, or you know I should say it like this, like, from which industry do you see next unicorn coming in? Is it from AI? Is it from climate? Is it from security? Is it from which industry do you think has the greatest potential on with the next unicorn coming in?
So I'll be very frank. I'm not a big fan of unicorns. I'm not a big fan of unicorns, and I'll tell you why. I feel a unicorn status is the consequence of something, right? It's not the need, or the real reason why you actually do something is not so that I reach a unicorn status. The whole story
Absolutely.
should be the whole story should be around what are you addressing. And if you look at that, I mean, all the three things that you just stated about, I mean, whether it's a blockchain or it's climate, these are all very high impact sensitive areas where, whether you like it or not, you're going to come in contact with it. Now, for people who are in this space, what is it that I'm going to deliver to people in this space that can make a difference in their lives is going to be the basis on which you will achieve a status. Now, I don't call it a unicorn status for want of another word. I would say a relevancy quotient. Let us remove the word unicorn from our lexicon and use the quotient called relevancy quotient, which means how relevant are you in that digital space to the sort of things that you have created and developed. A unicorn is a consequence of that. Now, I can tell you, for example, in my space, I should feel that We are building the rails, right? We are building the rails, and our platform is the rails in which who would be the first person to get into it? I feel a lot of the governments and a lot of their custodial capabilities will get onto the chain. And who is it going to benefit? It's going to benefit our citizenry to a large extent. And that is a great thing at that space. It's a fantastic capability that you're giving for governments to go and deliver services to their citizens. It's not a small thing. An old pension, an old man taking his pension every month from a government office, when he is, let's say, 70 or 80, having to go up to that office, having to get that pension, come back, having to prove who he is. This is what I call service capability. The government comes out and reaches to the public and says, we are here to help you. You don't need to move anywhere. We are there. When you express vulnerability, I am there for you. That is the arrival
Right.
point for a government that can be easily achieved to getting onto a chain like this. I mean, for me, that is what I call consequential arrival points. Anything that happens after that, if your chain gets very popular and then many people see the benefit, you having to build services on it, creating what is called value and commercialization, fantastic. You're a unicorn. Consequentially, no problem. That's the way it should be. Don't drive your story with unicorn. Drive your story with relevancy to customer, citizenry, capability. That will drive the story going forward. And believe me, this is not something new I'm saying. I'm sure many of our viewers are of the same disposition. They understand
Right.
that, like they say, you eat only 3 meals a day, right? I mean, just because you're a unicorn, you don't have 6 meals a day, right? So
Right.
the idea should be to bring out things which are relevant, to bring out things which are apt in the context in which it is made, and to ensure proliferation at a level where people start seeing value. I think that creates the whole story for, definitely, for this country and definitely globally.
Thank you, sir. Again, it's always a pleasure, and some always thoughtful, inspiration comes are coming out from you, right? It's always a pleasure for me to host this podcast with you, and to all our listeners, I hope you enjoyed all these thoughts coming from Mr. Pradeep sir, and we are coming up with lots of initiative. In fact, I'll try sometimes for all the Bangalore folks. I'll try, inviting Pradeep sir to some offline session where we are talking about this particular blockchain topic a little bit more. So yeah, thank you for again, Pradeep sir, for giving out your time for this podcast. It was again a wonderful opportunity for me to record this with you again. So
Thank you, Lakshit. Thank you once again, and very happy to be on this podcast with you. I again reach out to all your viewers. Very happy to share the story about our blockchain, and very importantly, if you are in the space, please do develop on code. There's a GitHub code out there. I mean, it's a call out to all of you. Please feel free. Do reach out to us, and thank you once again for having me over.
sure, likewise, my pleasure. Thank you everyone for joining in. We are coming up with lots of initiatives. Stay tuned. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.